Welcome to today's explainer. We are diving straight in to decode the incredibly complex, often totally mysterious workings of human consciousness. And we're going to do it by mapping them onto something you're probably already highly familiar with: video game mechanics and accounting principles. Now I know, it sounds like a completely unlikely combination, but trust me on this one. This framework, which is known as the Dual Ledger Theory of Mind version 2.0, is absolutely going to change how you view your own thoughts.
So think about this for a second. Have you ever been just staring at a screen or maybe standing in a really crowded room and you suddenly feel this overwhelming sense of mental lag? Your brain just kind of freezes. It's exactly like a video game stuttering or dropping frames because there's just way too much happening on screen all at once. Usually we just brush it off. We blame it on being tired or stressed. But today, we're actually going to look under the hood and diagnose exactly what is causing that mental stutter.
Consider this your brain's operating system manual. Today's agenda covers the mind's operating system, two ledgers of the mind, the spark of inspiration, why we get confused, mechanics of collaboration, and finally, auditing your own mind. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The mind's operating system. Let's jump right into the core hardware constraints that govern literally every single thought, decision, and feeling you have.
The absolutely crucial thing to understand here is that your brain operates under two distinct, non-negotiable budgets. First up, you've got a strict frame budget. Think of a video game running at 60 frames per second. The system has exactly 16.6 milliseconds to render the next frame, right? If it takes even a fraction longer, the game lags. Well, your brain works the exact same way with time limits. You subconsciously allocate a specific time window to a task, say 20 minutes. But inside that time window, you have your CPU budget. This is your actual raw mental horsepower. How much of your daily processing power is actively going into this specific frame? If you run out of CPU budget before the frame is over, boom, your mind drops the frame. You lose focus.
Moving on to Section 2. Two ledgers of the mind. Now that we've got a handle on the basic hardware constraints, how does our software actually process the real world? It's fascinating because human perception is essentially framed as a massive, ongoing accounting process. Your mind is constantly reconciling two very different ledgers. Ledger Day is your balance sheet. You can think of this as the unalterable blockchain of your past experiences. It forms your entire internal model of the world, heavily compressed, safely stored. Then you have Ledger B. This is your profit and loss statement. This is the real-time, dynamic, messy, sensory input you are experiencing right this very second. Your brain is desperately, constantly trying to balance the rigid structure of your past balance sheet with the wild incoming data of your current profit and loss statement.
And this balancing act fundamentally alters what cognitive scientists call qualia, which is just a fancy term for the subjective, vivid texture of reality. You see, qualia isn't fixed. It physically changes as your balance sheet updates. Think about it. The very first time you tried black coffee as a kid, your real-time profit and loss statement reported a toxic, bitter liquid. No thanks, right? But as you grew up and positive social experiences and energy boosts were added to your unalterable balance sheet, the context shifted. That is exactly why the bitter coffee you hated as a kid dynamically transforms into this deeply rewarding, aromatic adult morning ritual. The physical sensory input is exactly the same, but your internal ledger has completely rewritten the experience.
Section 3. The spark of inspiration. With those two ledgers firmly in mind, let's explore how this system manages to generate flashes of pure genius. Where do our best ideas actually come from?
So your consciousness actually acts like a hyper-vigilant internal auditor. It runs a lightning-fast three-step workflow to safely predict the future before you even take a single action. First, it creates multiple scenarios: best case, worst case, baseline case. Next, it runs a process called Popperian falsification. This aggressively tests these scenarios to basically weed out any fatal errors. Finally, it transcribes the optimal, surviving choice into reality by actually taking action.
The philosopher Karl Popper actually hit the nail on the head regarding this Step 2 process when he famously said, "Simulations die in our place." To protect you, your internal system engineers are constantly generating these highly dangerous, chaotic outcomes in your profit and loss ledger and then mentally murdering them off. We literally kill our bad ideas in our head just so we can survive out there in the physical world.
But here is where the absolute magic happens. Every once in a while, your brain generates a wild card, an if worldline scenario,
Like, what if coffee was transparent so it wouldn't stain my shirt? Or, hey, what if we took this incredibly bland hospital health food, soaked it in milk, and dumped sugar on it? Which, by the way, is exactly how Kellogg's was born. Or think of when Steve Jobs saw the graphical user interface buried away in a lab at Xerox and said, wait, what if this was for personal computers? When a wildly unconventional simulation somehow survives that brutal falsification process and projects a massive potential profit, your brain flags it. It floods your system with dopamine, creating this glorious system-wide glitch that we call an epiphany. A literal aha moment is really just your brain flagging a highly profitable, surviving simulation.
Moving to Section 4, why we get confused. So what happens when this incredible, fine-tuned prediction machine crashes and leaves you totally paralyzed?
Well, we kind of need to completely redefine what confusion even means. Confusion isn't a lack of time. It's not that at all. It is a total, catastrophic depletion of your CPU budget. And it's caused by invisible background tasks called zombie processes. These are your unresolved anxieties, your past regrets, or that lingering fear of other people's judgment. Because you didn't forcefully close these mental tabs, they just sit there, silently running in the background, quietly eating up your processing power until your main task just completely freezes up.
And this is a great way to see how we can map some really heavy academic concepts right onto our accessible accounting and gaming metaphor. So when academics talked about cognitive load theory, we just call that a CPU overload. Predictive processing, that's just a gap between your balance sheet and your profit and loss ledgers. Cognitive dissonance, those are the zombie scenarios eating up your memory. And conceptual conflict is just your system being forced into a high-load state to rebuild your balance sheet. It's the exact same phenomena, just viewed through a much more intuitive, mechanical lens.
Section 5. Mechanics of collaboration. Let's switch over to multiplayer mode now and see how these individual mental ledgers interact when we get into groups. If we look at a massive, landmark 2019 study published in Nature, we can clearly see the stark difference between small and large teams through this exact lens. Small startups, usually around 2 to 5 people, they just explode with innovation. Why? Because they can intersect their distinct balance sheets to create totally new if-worldline scenarios, and they can efficiently offload CPU tasks to each other without lag. But massive corporations, on the other hand, fundamentally stagnate.
So why do they stagnate? In large organizations, the sheer API communication cost, literally the act of just talking to everyone to stay synced up, scales exponentially. The math is brutal here. It's n times n minus 1 divided by 2. Basically, the communication cost alone eats up everyone's CPU budget. But more importantly, the group's massive collective potpourri and falsification process automatically murders any extreme, innovative idea before it can even be fully voiced. The group inherently demands a safe, baseline scenario, which means all those brilliant, bizarre, if-worldline glitches just get averaged out into absolute mediocrity. Which brings us to our final section, auditing your own mind. Let's look at how we can maintain and actually audit this complex internal system as we head into a highly technological future. We hear a lot about metacognition these days, right? Thinking about thinking. But true metacognition isn't just trying to think harder using your main processor. That'll just crash it. True metacognition is utilizing a parallel mental graphics card, a GPGPU. It's stepping back and objectively rendering a view of your system's overall performance without crashing your daily CPU budget. It's an independent rendering of exactly where your mental resources are going. And as we increasingly turn to large language models and AI to help us organize our thoughts and offload this metacognitive rendering, we are leaving quite a trail. Every single prompt, every question you type is actively projecting your internal mental balance sheet right out into the digital world. So ask yourself, as you interact every day and build this personalized AI context, what hidden zombie processes is your digital twin quietly revealing about your own hidden mental ledger? It's a fascinating and maybe just a little bit terrifying thought to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and we will catch you next time.